My name is Bruce Swann. I'm a group product marketing manager at Adobe, and the product that my team is responsible for is Adobe Campaign. And I'm glad to be here today to talk to you a little bit about it. And the idea is to give you an idea of some of the key capabilities of Adobe Campaign, where it fits within the Adobe Experience Cloud, and then just give you some things to think about, like how you could use a solution like Adobe Campaign either on its own or alongside Experience Manager or with Adobe Analytics or in the entire Marketing Cloud or alongside Microsoft Dynamics, you name it. So I want to give you some ideas as to how you can use it, as well as what some of the value is you could expect out of using a solution like Adobe Campaign. Any Campaign customers in the audience? All right, so a couple. Some of this will be a review of the capabilities that are in Adobe Campaign, but I'll also get into the integrations as well as where we're going with Adobe Campaign from a roadmap perspective. And again, there's only so much you can cover in 35, 40 minutes. So please pull me aside afterwards if you want to question me on anything or dig deeper into any of the topic areas. I'll be glad to do that. Here are my contacts if you want to reach out to me as well later on after this session and follow up. If you want this deck or additional materials and content, happy to do so. So email me, hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm active in all of those channels. I'll be glad to help you out. But again, what I'm going to do today is talk about some of the key capabilities that marketers leverage within Adobe Campaign. Adobe Campaign, best-in-class cross-channel campaign management solution on its own, but made even better alongside other solutions within the Experience Cloud. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'll talk to you about the vision for Adobe Campaign and really where it's going and the future of Adobe Campaign and what you can expect down the road. All right, so let's just dive right in. This is straight out of the Adobe playbook. We want to enable marketers to become experience makers because we know as marketers you do a lot more than just create content or help sell products. Really, in the end, you're helping sell experiences which are reflective of your brand. So think of a travel company. They're not just selling the room in the hotel or the seat on the flight. They're selling that overall experience, everything that leads up to the purchase of the ticket and then the trip itself. And of course, they want you to purchase more, but they want you to have a good experience. Not just the time you spend in the hotel room or in the hotel or in the property or in the seat, but every interaction that a consumer has with that brand. Same thing for a bank, for example. They're not just selling a mortgage, they're selling really every interaction, every experience that a consumer or a prospect has with a brand. It's just a key part of the ability for you as marketers to tell your story. So think beyond just helping sell products and truly how you can incorporate experiences into what you do. Typically, that's something we all buy into, quite frankly, because we all feel the stress and the pain that's associated with suddenly becoming experience makers, where we're not just sending out emails for the Friday afternoon newsletter or the transactional email or a single SMS message. It's a part of an overall journey. That's made up of different experiences. And really what that's done is it's changed that marketer's mandate to where they're doing things that they didn't even think about 3, 4, 5 years ago, like campaign orchestration. So how do I orchestrate experiences across all the different channels in which we engage? I mean, take off your work hat, put on your consumer hat for a second, and think of how you engage with your favorite brand, whether it be Marriott, Starbucks, Patagonia, or whatever. You probably used the web, but also your mobile device, emails, push notifications if you have the app, or even physically on site. There's just different ways to engage with a brand. So as a marketer, how do you orchestrate experiences across all those different touch points throughout the customer journey? So it's important to understand if a customer is a new customer, are they a life loyal customer, are they upset about something, where are they in the journey? You need to factor that into the overall customer journey, the overall experience as well. And then also doing things at real time, right? Where a concept has been around for a while, but being able to make decisions in real time as to exactly what the message or the offer or what the content should be at that moment. So we can orchestrate across different channels, but you have to be ready for when that consumer engages with your brand. And you kind of have to ask yourself, am I ready to deliver a meaningful and relevant experience? How do I personalize at scale? And personalization, another buzzword, been around for a while, but I'm sure it's something you can relate to. But if you're about to hit send on an email that's going out to 10 million people, how do you make sure that every single one of those emails is uniquely tailored to the recipient? Not just first name, but what content is relevant to the last time that recipient was on your website? Or does it tie in where they are in the overall customer journey? Or is it content or an offer that's predicted to elicit some type of a response? And then lastly, of course, mobile changes everything. It's not just a touch point or a channel. It's literally physically how consumers engage with the brand. So how do you incorporate that into all of this? So that's how our world has changed, and I'm sure there's probably 20 other things we could come up with if I polled the audience, but typically this is where we see where that cross-channel marketer's mandate and world has changed, often with the same team or even a smaller team, and with the same technology or different technologies in their stack, and so on. So really the core business issue, does that look okay? Okay. The core business issue for most marketers is that they have decent tools in place that help them get emails out the door, or help them, design and deploy a mobile app and get people engaged. Or they might use a partner for SMS messaging or an agency for direct mail. But is that all done in one place? Typically not, and I can't deny that there's so many brands that are like really awesome at email, but they're just okay at some of the other channels. And really the momentum is to be equally as effective across all channels, regardless of where that consumer engages. And I won't go through all of these business issues because there are probably ones that you can relate to, but having different tools, being good at email but not as good in other channels, or maybe you're really good at email and you're starting to fatigue your audience in that particular channel where you're not seeing the opens and the click-throughs and the revenues that you once saw. And more often than not, it comes down to teams being stretched thin, having too many different tools to manage, to where you end up in a world that looks something like this, where you have disparate technology throughout your marketing ecosystem, which a couple things lends to the top part of this slide, which would be a kind of a fragmented and broken experience for customers because they're getting different messages across different channels. And then as a marketer, what you can probably relate to is across the bottom part of the slide. If you're using different tools, you have fragments of customer data spread all over the place. And you don't have a common place or a single view or an accessible view of who a customer is that a marketer can even make sense of. So typically, what we find is exactly what's illustrated on this virtual whiteboard. And quite honestly, I'll talk to prospects who are using 3 different email tools. One for loyalty, one for marketing, one for transactional emails, where just an email alone, they have different systems in place. And really where they want to be able to go is to take the bottom part of that previous slide, have that single accessible view, easy access to content, an environment to where they can determine who they want to target with what offer and when, and deliver a very well orchestrated experience across all channels. And simple example, somebody joins the loyalty program, welcoming them, getting them on board, getting them familiar with your product or your brand. Research shows the more engaged across different channels customers are, the more likely they are to be a brand advocate and spend more. So, use email to activate customers in other channels, and if relevant, tie in the online and offline world. I always like to use the example of Patagonia, a gear company that I'm fanatical about, but they really tell a good story across all different channels, to where they're not always pitching a product. They're very good at with their creatives and telling their brand story, and they know from a seasonal perspective if I'm going to be interested in skiing or surfing and things like that, but they also are creatively promoting causes that I'm passionate about or an advocate about, and it's just a part of their overall story and how they tell it across different channels. And then, of course, bringing this back into the online world, kind of the classic, we tempted a customer, they clicked through, they got on the website, they almost booked that trip or made that purchase or opened that account, but then they bailed. How do we get them back, right? I mean, there's many different ways to get them back, and arguably it could be done so in a very creepy way to where, within seconds you get that email in the inbox or the ad on Facebook or what have you. But there should be some science behind that as well, to where what is the right time to get that person back. Is it if you're selling pizzas, it might be good to get them back within 5 minutes. Otherwise, they probably ordered the pizza somewhere else. But if it's a more carefully considered purchase, it might be okay to wait 90 minutes or 3 hours. Anyway, you factor that into that overall journey that lends to that meaningful and relevant experience. So let me talk a little bit about Adobe Campaign, which is a core component of the Adobe Experience Cloud. And as I mentioned, can stand on its own. We have over 1,200 customers across the globe that use Adobe Campaign to plan, execute, and orchestrate cross-channel experiences. Some use Adobe Campaign on its own, meaning not with other Adobe solutions, but we have many, many customers who also use it integrated with other Experience Cloud solutions. And I'll touch on some specific examples here in a moment. But really, two of the three key things that I'd like to talk about Adobe Campaign, I'll cover today. I'll talk about some of the key capabilities, integrations with the Experience Cloud. I'll talk about our perspective on the market and how we go to market with Campaign. And then what I'll leave out is the far right-hand side of this slide. Just know that we have a pretty extensive team of consultants, but also a vast partner ecosystem that we love to leverage to properly implement Adobe Campaign. So let me get into first the key capabilities. So this is where, if you're already a Campaign customer, I'm not offended if you read your email for the next 5 minutes. I'll be going through some of the things that you have at your fingertips. Or it could be a good reminder, either way. But there are really 6 or so key capabilities that I'll quickly walk through. There's an integrated customer profile, which really I describe as a single accessible view that Campaign user can access to create and launch and measure the results of their cross-channel campaign. So again, it's that single view into customer demographics, transactions. You can pull in Adobe Analytics data. You can even leverage third-party data from Adobe Audience Manager. The notion of having that view has been around for a long time. I'm not going to say 360-degree view, even though I just said it, but I don't use that to describe what Campaign brings to the table. What's key is making sure that view is accessible. And really what that means is the marketer doesn't have to call IT and have them run a SQL query to load a table to where they could then create a select. It's having instant access into that view. From there, they could then create their segments and their audiences and define who they want to target in a campaign, create test groups, create 12, 24, 100 segments in a campaign. Doesn't matter, right? It's just important for the marketer to be able to do that. And then it's also important for them to be able to leverage these segments and create orchestrated experiences like you saw a couple slides ago. In Adobe Campaign, powerful workflow interface and toolkit that allows you to define who you want to target, when, what kind of follow-up activities, and so on. There's also integrated email capabilities and mobile capabilities. So you don't have to leverage a third-party email services provider if you're using Adobe Campaign. You can, but ideally you want to, if you're on this mission to consolidate under one hood, you certainly can use the email capabilities and mobile capabilities within Adobe Campaign that allows you to design beautiful email content, leverage assets that are created and managed in Experience Manager, create not just email content but also mobile content, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. Another key capability are the integrations with other solutions within the Experience Cloud, which I'll touch on, and then lastly, very robust reporting capabilities as well. You could use a third-party reporting solution to report on that same profile and some of the data that Campaign generates, but you could also complement that with the reporting capabilities in Adobe Campaign. So I'll touch on the profile. So a lot of times our customers who are just starting out on their journey with Adobe Campaign, they might point it to a full-blown marketing database where that profile is already there. It's robust. It's built out. We have a partner that's helped build it, and so on. But in other cases, that profile might be a little lean. There might just be a handful of data attributes. And the powerful part of Adobe Campaign, as our customers use it to target their customers, that profile evolves to where you start sending out emails. You learn who's active, who's engaged, who was initially active but maybe lapsed over the last 90 days. Those are good data points to incorporate into that profile because it helps that marketer and that user of Adobe Campaign get even better with who they're targeting with their messages. And as I mentioned earlier, you could use that profile to determine who's likely to download an app, promote the app via email. Once they download the app, get them engaged and using that app, or in the case of direct mail or offline, tie that in as well. I mean, it's worth noting that 67% of our customers use Adobe Campaign for 3 or more channels. So that's kind of a proof point that while you could use Adobe Campaign just for email and as an email services provider, that to me is a good starting point. You really want to use it to orchestrate across different channels, using that profile to power that. And the power of that profile too is, as I mentioned, can also be used to drive your segmentation strategies. So if you've been using Unica or SAS or a legacy campaign management tool, you're not going to have to move away from the segmentation you did in those tools. Adobe Campaign will support sophisticated, deep, robust, wide segmentation strategies as well, which helps with personalization at scale. It helps with you understanding what segments are responding to your calls to action, which are not. I touched on the cross-channel orchestration capabilities. I would encourage you to go out to just Google Adobe Campaign YouTube. We have dozens and dozens of little demo snippets that touch on all of this that I'm talking about. And I apologize for not including a link. This is kind of an idea that I have as I'm presenting it, but I should have put a link in this slide where you could easily go out to that YouTube channel. But check it out. If you're remotely interested in all these things that I'm talking about, check out those videos. And they're good customer testimonials of our customers who are using these capabilities, one of which is this workflow capability, which this is just a little thumbnail screenshot in this slide, but it's really where our customers spend probably 90% of their day designing campaigns, creating workflows, creating test groups and control groups, and within accessing the email capabilities, the ability to design push notifications or in-app messages and so on. And as I mentioned, there's the integrated email and mobile, and this is quite frankly and truthfully and being transparent where we've made a lot of progress over the course of the past few years, where we have finally an up-to-date email designer that marketers actually want to use, that's integrated with Experience Manager, or Dreamweaver has a drag and drop editor. It's also a consistent UI for what's used for push notifications and other channels. So don't overlook the integrated email and mobile capabilities. And then lastly, on the reporting side, there's in-depth reporting capabilities that allow that marketer to ask questions of the data in a very similar way as they would Adobe Analytics, for example. It uses the same workspace shell to where they could drag and drop metrics and dimensions into a report and create graphs and charts and so on. Another area where we've definitely made some progress. And then bringing all these capabilities together is what allows that marketer to orchestrate experiences, down to that one-to-one level, where the first persona of the 4 in the screen, and I won't go through all of them, it might be Emma, who's completely different than Mark, who's completely different than Amber and Jamie, where Emma might be totally online doing what I described earlier. She starts to purchase that product and then abandons that process. So her experience with the brand could be totally different than Mark, who might be a little old school and still likes print. Right, where digital might be a key part of his journey, but offline and direct mail or print might be a key part of that journey. Or Amber might be mobile first. She reads email on her mobile device. She's receptive to a mobile app and will most likely use it, so get her engaged, and so on. So perfect example, simple examples, I get it, but perfect examples of how those capabilities can come together to allow a marketer to orchestrate experiences. So I've talked a lot about email And I'll just go through this just kind of quickly to give you an idea of what else you could do with Adobe Campaign. We have brands like Travelocity and others within the Expedia family that rely on Adobe Campaign for email. That's their number one channel for driving revenue. They totally rely on us, but you could also use it, beyond email for cross-channel engagement, cross-channel activation. Journey management is a buzzword. There's another company that has a big tower in San Francisco that I think has a patent on the word journey management, but it's something that marketers think about all the time. Like, how do we onboard a customer, get them loyal, spending, becoming a brand advocate? There's no reason why you couldn't use Adobe Campaign to support that. Go beyond email, marketing optimization, meaning you could use Adobe Campaign to define a taxonomy of rules that get applied across all channels that help figure out, like, have I sent Bruce too many emails in a week, let's move to another channel, and things like that. Or from a strategic perspective, onboarding campaigns. If you work for a company that has a subscription model like Adobe does, it's how we use Adobe Campaign to onboard new Creative Cloud customers. It's great when we get a new customer who signs up for the Creative Cloud, but we obviously want them to maximize that investment that they're making. So there's a series of emails that notifies that customer about what they can do, what else they can do, other apps they could tap into, different ways to see value in Adobe Campaign. And then also just doing so at scale. We have customers who have databases with north of 100 million customer profiles and multiple terabytes of data. So it's certainly a solution that would scale. But as I mentioned, Campaign is made even better alongside other solutions within the Experience Cloud. So I'll touch on that. And really what those integrations do is they bring together data, content, and then using Campaign to help deliver that content across different channels. So I'll start with analytics. And the idea with analytics and a solution like analytics is Adobe Analytics, that is it surfaces a tremendous amount of insight. But what good is it if you can't do anything about it? And it's a powerful capability to where you can create an audience in Adobe Analytics and share it with Adobe Campaign, to where if there's somebody who abandoned a certain page in the last week, you can create an audience and target those people accordingly. Or you could also do it in more real time using triggers, to where you could send that classic remarketing email, to where if an itinerary or a cart or a form is abandoned, or really anything that could be tagged on a page. It could be maybe you're promoting a video you want the recipient of an email to watch, and they get 30 seconds into that video and don't finish the last 30 seconds. You could trigger an email that's sent to them that gets them back to finish that video. Maybe there's a call to action at the end. And then lastly, as you use Campaign with analytics together, you're learning quite a bit. You're generating a lot of cross-channel data that can be fed into Campaign and Adobe Analytics that can be very useful for your attribution and cross-channel analysis. Integrations with Audience Manager is interesting because you could use the rich source of data in Audience Manager to be useful or used in your segmentation strategy with Adobe Campaign. So you can use that first and third party data to create a segment in Audience Manager that then gets fed into Adobe Campaign in a very encrypted and secure way, to where you could then email them. So a very powerful way, again, to use that first and third party data. And then conversely, you could use Adobe Campaign data to feed back into Audience Manager for lookalike modeling, to where maybe there's a segment of customers that you target with emails or different channels using Adobe Campaign, and you think, man, I could really use a lot more people like those in that segment. They're active, they spend money, they're brand advocates. What you could do is create a segment or an audience that gets shared with Audience Manager, to where Audience Manager will do lookalike modeling, to where you could then, as a marketer, use that audience, advertise to them, try to acquire them, and so on. And then with Experience Manager, it's a way to connect the content part of the equation. So analytics and audience manager is the data piece. Experience manager would be helping bring content into the equation, where you could access fragments or assets from audience manager in Adobe Campaign as you design your email templates. And it's just a powerful way to, again, consolidate tools, to access a single source of the truth for assets and images, and can certainly streamline that whole content creation process. If the Experience Cloud is being used as the creation piece, Experience Manager as the repository, Campaign can kind of close the loop on all of that and bring those assets into the emails and other ways the content is being used, whether it's a landing page, in a very seamless way. And what that does is it helps streamline that whole content creation process and helps marketers scale and not replicate data or assets across different solutions. And then there's also integration with the Experience Cloud, the Creative Cloud. So kind of a cool feature to where if that email creative designer is comfortable with HTML and using Dreamweaver, they could just click on a button and open up Dreamweaver and in a very synchronous way share the content between Dreamweaver and Adobe Campaign. And again, this is a great way to streamline that whole content creation process. And then one other integration point I'll talk about, and again, in the spirit of being transparent, I wish this integration was used more, because Adobe Campaign and Target together can be used to deliver contextual email. And I don't know why our customers don't take advantage of this more. I think they get stuck with using Campaign with other solutions that help render content when the email's opened. But just know, if you or you know of somebody who wants to deliver that more contextual email experience where the content is determined when somebody opens the email, this is a powerful way to do it. And we have customers who are interested in doing this. If it's a retailer who, let's say, is promoting a sale that's good for the weekend only. And like many of us, you might not get to your inbox until the following Monday, long past the sale. So swap out that sale image with something else. Or if it's an airline or any industry where there's a fixed inventory of something that you're trying to sell, and let's say that inventory runs out, that could play into what content ultimately gets rendered in that email when it's open. So definitely something to think about. It can also take into account location of where somebody is, as well as date and time. All right. One other thing too, we do have powerful integrations with Microsoft Dynamics 365 as well as other CRM systems as well. I left that slide out of this presentation, but know that that's there, that we have those CRM connectors. And Adobe in recent years has made a lot of investments into that partnership with Microsoft that gets only better, to where Campaign and Dynamics 365 are tightly integrated. All right, so that's enough for the capabilities. A couple things. Check out that YouTube channel that I talked about. I'll be glad offline to go into any of those capabilities if you want to go deeper. But at least start with the videos on the YouTube channel. They're great little demo snippets to where you won't get bored. I mean, they're 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long at the most, and we have them well organized. So something else that's important to think about when you think about Adobe Campaign, whether you're a current customer or are thinking about a solution like Adobe Campaign, is I'm confident that you get it, that you need to orchestrate experiences across channels. I'm convinced that clicks and that resonates, and I'm preaching to the choir. But what I know is always a challenge is, well, where do I start? I'm pretty good at email now. Do I want to rip and replace the email service provider or providers that I've been using and go with Adobe Campaign? And then where do I go from there? Or it could be you've been using a solution like Unica for years, and you're uncertain as to what the future of Unica is, and is it really connected with a digital ecosystem? You feel good about your segmentation capabilities and the ability to at least orchestrate actions, but you need to bring it to a digital world. Maybe that's your starting point. Or we see a lot of brands, big brands like like Mattel or Coca-Cola, where they kind of get the email piece, they get the orchestration piece. What they want to be able to do at massive scale is take on that whole customer journey, and using not just Campaign, but the entire Experience Cloud to do so. So starting with acquiring new customers, but then providing superior experiences throughout that overall customer journey. And so that's not lost on us. So we know that you have to have some place to start. And this is kind of a simple way to look at it, where if you're struggling with email and want to get really good at that before you take on anything else, cool, we'll meet you where you are with that and help you get good with that channel. Or if you want to wade in a little deeper and take on orchestration or into the deeper end with journey management, absolutely we can do that as well. And I'll give you a couple different examples of brands that are doing that. So Travelocity is a good example. They send out millions and millions and millions of emails in any given week. And as you could imagine, for an online travel agency, not only is personalization of the essence, but so is timing, so is tight coordination with their airline partners or car rental or hotel partners or whoever they need to partner with. There's a lot going on in that ecosystem. It's not just that email you get and it's tailored to you. There's so much that goes into that at massive scale. And they actually integrate with Adobe Analytics, so they have online behavioral data feeding into Adobe Campaign to where they could tie in, did Bruce browse hotels or airfares in San Diego? Let's make him aware of some specials that are out there and get that email in his inbox pretty quickly. Or in the weekly promotional emails, are we providing personalized content that will elicit that response we're looking for? And so this is a perfect example of a company that relies heavily on email to promote their services as well as their partners, but they also use Campaign to dabble with some of what they're doing from a mobile perspective, as well as what they're doing online. Good example of a company, though, using Campaign for email. This example for Virgin Holidays is probably my favorite example. This is the before Adobe Campaign. And this is common, where Virgin Holidays was using a tool for campaign management and 3 different email services providers, something else for mobile. And what's near and dear to a travel company like Virgin Holidays is to not only get their customer to purchase the trip, but that window between the purchase and the trip itself. Because what's near and dear to their brand, they're part of the Branson empire, is to promote fun, build anticipation, provide great experiences across digital channels. More importantly, drive incremental revenue through upgrades or purchasing trip insurance. Or simple example, they wanted to be able to provide their customers in a very meaningful and easy way the trip confirmation number, to where you could use that confirmation number, go online and pick out your seats and self-service your trip. What they don't want are people calling into call centers, because that costs money, it's expensive, it's disruptive to the journey. Long story short, they weren't able to do that with all the different tools they were using. They were not able to orchestrate experiences across different channels in a meaningful way. And I'll just fast forward. This is what their world looks like today. They're able to use some of what they're doing with a third-party tool to put in interactive elements into an email. They're able to infuse their brand in every single interaction. They're able to provide that confirmation number front and center so you know what it is and you can easily save it. And that alone has saved them tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars by reducing calls into a call center. But equally as important, they're able to drive incremental revenue through meaningful and timely promotions for upgrades. Again, in between that time when somebody books a trip and the trip itself, it's a window where most are going to be receptive to an offer or a communication from a brand. And then the last example, talked about email, talked about campaign orchestration. This is journey management, and I'll go through this kind of quickly, but it's reflective of what a large insurance company in Australia wants to be able to do with Adobe Campaign and other Experience Cloud solutions, where they want to tie in how they can best acquire customers, but then also get them active and engaged in other channels and cross-sell and upsell. And across the middle bar of this slide, you can see a perfect example of all the different touch points that come into play that they need to factor into. Are we providing a meaningful experience, but are we also driving revenue and getting the right result we want with our customers? So that's an example of journey management. So hopefully those 3 customer example is going to help you understand where you could start with Adobe Campaign, where you could go. There are videos for all of these that I just shared out on that YouTube channel. I would encourage you to check out. Anybody attend a Marketo session earlier? Any questions about that, or could I just move on? Because a lot of times people say, well, what's the difference? You guys bought Marketo last year. When would somebody use Marketo? When would somebody use Campaign? Do I need to cover that, or you just take a picture of it? It's pretty self-explanatory. I'll spend 30 seconds. I'm very proud of this slide because it tested my PowerPoint skills. But on the left-hand side, just think of what that B2B marketer is looking for, right? They're looking for account-based marketing, lead management, lead scoring, sales enablement, lead nurturing, having an account profile that ties into an account-based marketing initiative. That's the sweet spot for Marketo. No denying that. The sweet spot for Campaign, right-hand side of this slide. I'll cut the story short with all the stuff that I've talked about in the last 30 minutes, so hopefully you were paying attention. There is a gray area, right? Because both solutions send email, both solutions have at least a connection into digital asset management. But if it's something you're thinking about, I would just take a good hard look. Are you B2B or are you B2C? Or if you're B2C but maybe further down market in terms of the number of customer records you have or the number of customers in your database, Marketo would be a good fit. But this is a good way to, at a high level, to see the world and where Campaign and Marketo come together. And then lastly, he took a call. Lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the product vision and where we're going with this. And there's really 4 key pillars where we're investing our efforts and where I see a lot of investment internally. One of which is scale. And scale means different things to different people, but just know it's the scale in terms of the ability to support like what Travelocity wants to do with email. So send 30 million emails an hour, something along those lines. Or scale could be, I have terabytes and terabytes of data sitting in a data lake. I don't want to have to replicate that in Adobe Campaign. So let's be able to use that. So that's where we're focusing. We're focusing on artificial intelligence. Again, a buzzword, but different tools that help you as a marketer do things faster and quicker, like determine what's the best time to send an email or what's the best subject line, to where you might have a team of people or one person who's very talented in analytics that can help you figure that out, but what you really need are tools that can scale to help you do that. Also keeping a close eye on different channels. Thankfully, we just introduced support earlier this year for in-app messaging and pushing personalized messages to the app inbox. But we're looking at different messenger apps and other ways that consumers engage with brands across the globe, where Line or WhatsApp might not be as prevalent here, but it might be elsewhere. So it's thinking through those things. And then lastly, the Adobe Experience Platform, to where you can't escape an Adobe presentation without somebody talking about the platform, but it's the future of Adobe Campaign, the future of Adobe, and Campaign is a key part of that, to where Campaign fits in is through a new component of that platform called Triggered Journeys, to where you could, in a workflow, build out triggered moments that go along with your marketing defined moments. So marketing defined moments would be your weekly emails or pushing outbound. Triggered moments could be I pass an iBeacon in the hotel and you send me a message. But it's also leveraging that unified profile and all of the assets that are in the platform as well. So that's the future in a nutshell of where we're going. This is also my last slide. So if you want to talk more about the capabilities, the go-to-market strategy or use cases or customer success or the roadmap, I'm happy to help you with that. Or if you're more comfortable hitting me up on LinkedIn or email, I'm happy to do that as well.